I don't think consumers differentiate between 85, 95 and 90. People only differentiate between 0 and 100.
At the top, there's only room for one, right?
I believe in India, 80% of celebrity usage in advertising that I see is not thought.
Creating is easy. What to create is $1 million question.
Hi, you're listening to Marketing with Vani, in which I speak to marketing gurus. Together we decode how marketing works in the real world to grow your business. For all B2B companies that I have consulted with, do you know what is the first, the only, and the most obvious marketing challenge they state? Help me with my proposition. How can prospective clients immediately get what I offer, or why must they buy me? In this episode, I'm speaking with Rohit Bhayana, managing partner and co-founder of Lumis. Lumis Partners invest in companies that solve problems for SMEs, rural, and elders, or the aged population, using technology and data. Rohit explains the most common challenges faced by B2B companies, what must they look out for, and what it takes to be successful given technology can always be copied. How do you take the decision on which is a company, which is a good company to invest in? What do you look for as an investor?
So, Vani, I think the foremost thing in whether it's B2B or B2C really doesn't matter is the sharpness of the use case. What is the problem you're solving? And I think you'll realize that we all create multiple complexities in how we ingest the understanding of the problem, and therefore in how we express the solution set, and then how we position and sell the solution set. So I think in the founders and the key management, one of the things which defines them apart is how simply can they lay that connection between what are they solving for and how they're solving for. The what and the how is what I have so often see breaks down. And that should be the easiest thing. That's what you exist for, and that's what your whole venture is about. So I think the moment you cross the chasm on that you very explicitly said, this is the problem you're solving, and this is how you're going about it. Forget whether your approach at it is the right approach or the wrong approach, whether it's commercially successful or not, whether your pricing is right or not, your competitive landscape is right or wrong. But for anyone who's on the outside of your business, trying to understand from you, what and why are you driven towards solving that problem is very important. So that's to me the first thing, because of which I'll cross the first 5 minutes or not.
So what you're saying is, explain to me as a founder, what is the problem that you're solving for? And is the solution that you're presenting compelling enough? Are you able to explain to me? It's almost as though, are you able to pitch to me what you are offering in simple words that I immediately get it? This is the problem you're solving. This is why I might need you if I'm in blah, blah circumstances, or if I'm running blah, blah business, or I'm this kind of a consumer, or I have this problem. Then why I need you must be amply clear.
Precisely.
Great. And with B2B companies specifically, Rohit, do you feel that this is something that you find in the many presentations that you get, in the many pitch decks that you get? Do you think that this is something that B2B founders struggle with?
Hugely. And I think, as much as I said, it is simple to be done. It's not simply done. That's where the problem lies. We all, in the manifestation of the how, overcomplicate the problem. The problem is always simple. The problem is said simply. It is how we internalize it and solve for it that we overly complicate it. And actually, we end up solving sometimes the wrong problem. And I'll take an example for you. This typically applies that a lot of startups in India were focused on the grocery supply chain. In that supply chain, are you talking about, obviously, you have to be clear you're talking about B2B or B2C. Let's say you're talking B2B. So you're figuring out how to do fulfillment to the Kirana stores. It's B2B.
Right.
Firstly, are you clear that you're talking that's what you're solving? Yes, okay. Let's assume they've gone past that you're solving for fulfillment to the Kirana stores. What is the problem you're solving there? Are you solving the problem of replenishment, of price, of getting... And replenishment means I can replenish your inventory 3 times a week or 5 times a week. Are you saying that you'll get it cheaper for them? Are you saying you'll get them goods they don't get today? Or are you saying
Right.
you'll get them goods which today get spoiled, which are perishable, you're going to get them today? So these are four different problems. The problem with a lot of us is we love to blend them in. And the moment we blend them in, we have created a multi-headed monster.
Which is
And
let me do everything.
either let me do everything or I think my solution fits all. Actually, I'd go to the extent of saying, Vani, even if your solution fits all, don't say it fits all. Utopian solution, fake it that it is only solving one problem. And you might, if you're successful, come to problem 2, 3, and 4 later. As an investor, I would much rather hear that you're solving one and you'll come to 2, 3, 4 later, rather than you saying, I'm so great that I've solved 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them, and here I am.
Fantastic. So you're saying be sharp in what you're offering, and in being sharp, you are likely going to be a lot more appealing to the target audience that you are talking to than trying to broad base your offering and saying, look, I do everything for everybody.
Precisely.
And why would you say that, Rohit? Isn't the common fallacy always that, oh, if I were to very narrowly define what my offering is, of the four things that you mentioned, for example, if I were to pick only one, would I not limit my market? Will I not become less appealing to an investor? Should I not be telling an investor, look, I have such a large market. I'm doing everything for everyone, therefore invest in me?
No, Vani, it doesn't happen like that. I think investors are pretty clear people. At least when they come to a meeting, they're very clear. And I'm assuming this entire conversation in the context of early stage startups. Then it's the other way around. The investors are trying to earn a right to participate in them. So I'm talking about early stage investors when the founders and the management are trying to earn a right to get you capital, not when the investors are trying to earn a right to be on your capital. If that be the case, you want your clarity of a product roadmap, and I'm using the word product roadmap rather generally, but you want a clarity of the product roadmap. Because you're a startup, you're obviously constrained with resources. It's not that you can't have a vision to solve everything that you want to solve, but it's just that you want to optimize your resources at finitely that specific thing, which is the first stop on the rail track. You want to solve that first. Once you solve for that first, you extend your life. And by extending your life, you get to the next rail stop. And then you get to the third rail stop. You might solve 5 things, but you want to start with 1, 2, 3, 4, and then get to really present it that ways to your incoming investor, to the people you're wooing in, that this is how I'm seeing it. And a lot of times what happens is investors hear that and they say, yeah, that's right. But don't you think you should be doing 1 and 3 together? And you could say, yeah, I have it in my mind. It obviously depends on resources. That's a far better approach than saying, no, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 altogether. You're better off saying I'm sequencing it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if I have resources, I can attempt to do 1 and 3 together. It'll find more buyers, so to speak.
Fantastic. And in doing so, what is your advice to the B2B companies that come to you or anybody who comes to you with a pitch deck? Or how do you look for defensibility in their proposition? Because a lot of stuff, there is just so much stuff out there, there's so much technology out there that to be able to truly present something which is a unique offering, which the world hasn't seen before, is very, very difficult. So how do you build defensibility around what you offer?
That's a great question, Vani. Actually, that question is the make or break in my mind. See, and not just because it's a question about have you created the defensibility. The question is really, are you even thinking of that? So I think the first thing that would come to my mind is that when I'm talking to somebody, are they even thinking like that? Are they even thinking of creating a defensibility? Trust me, a lot of people don't think like that. They are thinking about getting an innovation and bringing that innovation to life. I think as important as it is bringing an innovation to life is about how to give that life scale and form. People who are thinking of birthing the innovation and feeding the innovation and then growing, scaling it, obviously know that while you were even working at it, there are 50, 100 other people who are working at it. And therefore, what will make it succeed, in your words, the defensibility moat, is actually how fast are you able to move? And how fast you're able to move is driven by, are you genetically even programmed to think about growth and think about velocity and think about scale? Some founders are, some aren't. And those who aren't, it's fine if you aren't, but it's important that you're surrounding yourself with either a co-founder or your early team that's coming on that can complement that thinking. Because if the lead thinking in the startup, if the lead thinking is only around innovation and not about scaling beyond that, that's the start of the problem. That's the start of the fact
Right.
that defensibility, a moat will not come in. Now, let's say, yes, you are indeed, you either have it in you or you are surrounded with the right people, and if you're thinking right, I think then it's all about, are you thinking commercial innovation? As important as IP innovation is, I think equally, if not more important, commercial innovation is. How will you take it to market? How will you make your customers have a friction free, a frictionless buying experience? How will you drive it in a way where adoption will be quicker? I think the moat comes even more with that than it comes with an IP and an innovation.
Very nice. So, what you're saying is that innovation is only one part of it. Don't come to me with only an innovation. Also, think about how are you going to make this a commercial success in it could be the speed with which you take it to the market, with which you get first mover advantage, and it could be the many other elements. So, you're saying it could be in the customer experience, it could be in the user interface, it could be in maybe in the way I deliver the service, it could be many other aspects of the mix where I'm able to form some aspects, somewhere I'm able to get some defensibility, where I'm able to build a moat. And in all of this, Rohit, what do you see the role of building the brand to be? Do you often find B2B companies talking the language of brand and marketing? Where do you think the role of that figures in the B2B world?
It doesn't come naturally, Vani. I'll be very candid. It doesn't come naturally. And partly it's understandable because somewhere, and this goes also to the previous question you asked, somewhere in their mind it's all about innovation and they're
Yeah.
driven like that. For those few where brand comes in, they truly look at brand as a moat and they truly want to
Right.
invest in it. And I'm glad you asked this because when I talked about that commercial, that in that defensibility mode creation, commercial galloping is important. A big part about commercial galloping is, do you have a brand? Are you invested in it? Are you making people understand you're differentiated? Do you stand for something beyond what your product stands for? I think it doesn't come naturally at all. It's not easy. It doesn't come naturally. Your resources are obviously prioritized towards the product development, towards market access, and not towards brand. Brand is the last thing on the mind. So it doesn't come naturally, but for whom it does come, and if they're able to balance the priorities right, it takes them a huge distance. And I've
And
seen founders who not only believe in it, they talk about it. And they talk about it to investors saying very well, I'm investing in my brand, and this is why I'm investing in my brand, and this is why it's important to me. And you sitting on the seat of an investor, you're like, yeah, the person gets it. He really understands why it's important.
fantastic, fantastic. And when they talk about building the brand, what kind of specific elements, Rohit, do you think? I mean, what do they talk about, or what do you think is an important for a B2B founder to think about in terms of building the brand? One of the very simple things I tell a lot of the companies that I work with is that does your website, like, exactly what you started with, is your proposition even clear on your website? Let's say somebody were to hear a review, or if you were to go and meet a prospective client, what are they likely to do? They're first likely to search for you on Google, land on your website. Is your website going to amply be able to explain with credibility what you offer? Do you have some testimonials over there? Do you have some bit about why me? Why am I the best? Do you feel adequate number of founders talk that language about what my website is like, or what kind of collaterals have I developed, or how am I reaching out to prospective clients?
Yeah, and again, a mixed bag, Vani. On the website, many of them do. I think where challenges start emerging, or where the difference between the ones who really get it versus the ones who don't really get it is, as you communicate across multiple channels, from your website to your social media handles to your proposals you're making to your clients, to how you are positioning yourself to your employees, there's a disconnect there. And as early stage as you might be, I think those gaps start showing out. And especially B2B customers, when they are dealing with a startup, and I know many who talk to me all the time. So when a B2B customer is sitting across the table with the startup, one of the biggest things going on in their mind is risk. It is a risky proposition. Am I going to trust them? Are they even going to be around? Are they even going to be able to support the product or the offering? What if they're not around? If they're not around, am I going to be able to handle it on my own? am I giving them something which is so high end and mission critical for me, and therefore I'm risking myself with it? So I think as you think about those things, what do customers do? They want to know how your employees are looking at you. They want to know how you're talking about yourself. They know, are you obviously financially backed long enough? And that's where branding and positioning and marketing start crossing the lines from just being about talking about yourself to talking about your long term sustainability, your long term viability. And it becomes very important. Actually, so much so that the younger you are, the more you need to evoke trust, then the more mature and stabler you are, because then trust kind of comes along the way. It's a byproduct. But when you're very early on, you need the unfair advantage of being able to evoke trust.
Very nice. So there are two big things you said over here, Rohit. One, you said, are your employees even talking the same language? And this is something that I hear very often. In fact, some of the bigger companies that I've worked with as well, even 300 crores plus, I've seen, if you were to ask different people within the organization on what business are you in or what are you solving for, you get different replies across the board. And this in itself is the start point of great confusion. When you're not clear about what is the problem that you're solving for, like you said, do we even have one version of truth within the company on what is it that we stand for? What is it that we are all collectively setting out to do? What is our brand proposition? Is there one version of truth? And the second thing that you talked about was this element of risk. If you're a new startup and you've approached me, then of course I'm worried. Like you said, are these guys even going to be around? So, how does a young startup, what does a young startup do? What would be your advice to your young B2B company? Very bright founders, great proposition, strong technology backing. How should they earn the trust of their potential clients when they're pitching against a big established global firm?
Yeah. So, Vani, this problem today is relatively easier than it was, say, 10 years ago, when buyers and large corporates, that is, buyers wouldn't even want to entertain the thought of innovation. And therefore, and if they do, they would take innovation from the standard big companies. Microsoft and SAP, so on and so forth, the Salesforce.com are the ones who will come and give them innovation on a platter. But now I think the realization, even with the big corporates, is so high that innovation is akin to my ability to work with startups. So that's a huge step forward. They already know they need to work with startups. And I can't tell you how many, actually there'll be fewer names we have of large corporates who would not want to work with startups than those who want to. And this number was inverse. This problem was the other way. So that's a great thing that they're willing to. They understand they're so important for the innovation headset, which otherwise cannot be created internally in a large company. Having said that, now they're dealing with several startups. I think the comfort they want is more than anything else. I love the innovation. Can I control the downside if things don't go right? They love the upside. They want to control the downside. Startups who do it well by knowing that the client is not just trying to understand features and features and features. They're also trying to understand, agar aisa nahi hoga to kya hoga? If I don't deliver this, then what happens? If I delay the launch date, what does it mean for them? So the buyer wants to hear that language. They don't want to hear how good you are. They get it. By the way, the reason you're seated there is they get it. What they want to now go into is not features, it's governance. What startups do is they switch from features to price discussion. Honestly, price matters least. It feels it matters a lot, but it's noise in the system. The order of importance is they get you in for price. Sorry, they get you in for features or innovation. They sign you up for governance, for the downside management. Somewhere in between those two, they also ended up touching price. If you get that, what you realize is price is a hygiene. You got to discuss it. You got to get past it. But that is not why a deal will happen or not happen. You got in because they loved you for your innovation. That's why you're seated on the table. They will sign you if you can give them a comfort that you can do downside management or governance management well for them.
Very nice. And in the downside management, Rohit, would you say that the relationship that I'm able to build with the guy opposite would be critical. When do we feel most vulnerable? When we feel, oh gosh, I don't know the guy opposite. Will I be able to have a confession or heart to heart with the guy I pick up the phone on? In what way do I mitigate risk? So, like you're talking about managing the downside, I'm a young startup. I may not have too many use cases. I may have only 2 clients that I've worked with so far. So I don't have too many case studies to be able to show you. I can show you my background. I can tell you, look, I've come from great colleges. I've done great work. I understand this. I've worked with I've delivered this tech for a couple of companies. Here are the 2 case studies I have. What else can I give you to give you assurances on downside management? How do I make sure Rohit feels, yes, these guys can be trusted to do business with? The downside is not going to be very large. How do I manage that?
Vani, there's several ways, and you would have heard of all of them. So there's several ways in which one can do this. From not firstly and foremost comes being flexible with a large.
Right.
With flexibility means if they tell you that they like you, but they would want you to work through a large channel partner, you're clear in your mind. I'm not saying you agree or disagree, but at least you know that that possibility exists. And you should be ready to discuss it. It shouldn't be that you're sitting in a meeting and you're taking lights in the eyes and you're frozen and you don't even know where that question came from. That's a common question. Will you work through a large partner of mine? Because that large partner of mine gives me confidence. Till the time I haven't tested your IP and your innovation, I want to work through them. So from something as simple as that to something as not so simple as where they want you to give them, in computer science words, they want you to give them the source code. They want you to put the code in a escrow facility because they want to know that tomorrow you aren't around. If 3 years later you aren't around, you die before 3 years, they need to still run their business on your product or technology, and therefore they need access to that. And that's not an unfair ask. That's a fair ask. You are a startup. Anything could happen in your life. And indeed, if they're switching their business to your technology, your product, your whatever, they do want to know that you can, they have a workaround you being there or not. The point I'm trying to get to is you need to be flexible. You need to know that these are valid questions. You can't be offended by somebody asking you about these things. These are puts and takes of doing business with large companies.
Yes, very nice. And finally, what would you say, Rohit? This is my last question to you. Given that in a B2B setup, when I'm pitching to a B2B client, I always have to think about the vast number of stakeholders that I must address. Because my pitch presentation is not going to be to only the CIO or maybe only the CFO. I probably have to win trust with the CIO and the CFO and maybe even the company secretary and the CTO and the CMO. How do I do that?
I think that's honestly most paramount. And then this goes to commercial clarity. I think a lot of us end up starting businesses, creating startups, and we aren't ready to be aware, or we aren't aware that there'll be so many stakeholders involved in any decision, and therefore forget even whether or not you're managing the relationships or not. You're not even aware of the frame of reference those buyers are coming from, or those stakeholders. So when a CFO asks you a question, he or she is coming from a very different standpoint than when a CTO is asking or a chief procurement officer is asking. And you're not able to gauge it. And therefore, a very simple but a practical thought I have for startups is, it is in your early stages, it's very difficult to have the vocabulary with which you can deal with all these people. I think it's perfectly fine, therefore, to bring in, at least in the first few deals, some partners with you who can help you with that. That partner can be an accounting firm if you're dealing with CFOs. That partner can be a large technology company when you're dealing with CIOs or CTOs. It's perfectly fine. Those guys know it. They will ask for a channel representation fee, and that's fine. They will add tremendous value. So unless and until on your team you have the ability to manage a multi-stakeholder relationship, or unless you're dealing with a client who really is, which is a rare situation where the client says, hey, it's a one-buyer decision, which rarely ever happens to be. It's always better to have a partner who is able to take you and then give you more than just a single dimension on which you're comfortable taking that deal, but this partner can add the 5 other dimensions.
Fabulous. Fabulous, Rohit. All right. That's all I have Thank you so much for this. This was tremendously helpful.